Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, continuing our money making week, I'm bringing back one of the glitch builds from, I guess, every other previous update of Gran Turismo 7. This is thanks to Alert Jester, who sent me over the screenshots on PSN in many different forms, so you can actually get quite a bit more power out of this thing this time. It is still a bit of a tricky one to drive, and it does require the GTR engine swap, but it's still a very, very good car, especially if you've still got the previous iteration of this vehicle. So the livery run here is the one I've always ran for this. It's by King McNico. As you can see, there's the hashtags. That's what you're going to use to search it up. And it'll pretty much give you everything you need. It's got the perfect tyre size, all that good stuff. Everything you really need, apart from the rear wing, which you will actually have to change out to the standard rear wing to be able to get this to dip under that 600 pp, I guess, limit for Tokyo. In terms of kind of, I guess, aero parts and such, we are running a wide body on this, so make sure you have got yours wide bodied. You will actually need it to be able to put this livery on anyway, so that's a pretty easy way to remember. So again, this is a wide bodied build. In terms of front aero, we're running type B, so just remember that. It's not standard, it's not type A, we're actually equipping the type B. And then on the sides, we're running type A, not the standard. On the rear, again, we're running type A, so it'll have the quite big diffuser at the back. And then, as you can see on the rear wing, we are running the standard part. Now, like I said, this is an engine swap build, so as you can see, the engine model on the left is not the standard for the Lancia Delta. We're running the racing hard tyres like we always do here. We're running a fully customizable suspension. Body height adjustment is 110 at the front and 115 at the rear. Anti-roll bar is 1 at the front and 10 at the rear. Damping ratio compression is 35 at both front and rear. Expansion is 45 at both front and rear. Natural frequency is 2.00 at the front and 2.20 at the rear. Negative camber angle 0.5 at the front and 1.4 at the rear, and the toe angle is 0.05 inwards at the front, and then as you can see at the rear it's 0.20 inwards. Obviously, suspension does not affect the PP of a car as of update 1.23 and update 1.24. We're running a fully customizable racing transmission. We're going to set that to 330. You do not need to tune the individual gears for this one. We are running 83 ballast with a ballast positioning of 50. And then we're going to run the power restrictor at non-limited, so it's running full max power. We are running a fully customizable ECU. Again, we are not changing the output for this either. Downforce at the front is 86, and at the rear is all the way to the right at 100. As you can see, for the parts, we are not running a turbocharger on this. We're running an anti-lag system set to strong. No intercooler for this one. We're running no air cleaner for this one. We're running racing silencer, racing exhaust manifold, racing brake pads. As you can see, we're not running the racing brake system, which kind of does hinder the braking potential of this car. In terms of the clutch and flywheel, we're running it at semi-racing, not full racing. And then perma mods, we're running bore up, stroke up, engine balance tuning, polished ports. And then as you can see just down here, we're running racing crankshaft. And then for the weight reductions, we're running stage 1, 2 and 3. The reason I'm not taking you through my parts store is because everything's purchased, so it's just a bit of a cluster, but feel free to pause at any moment. The event we're going to be using, well, you're going to head into Asia, and you're going to go over to Tokyo Expressway in Japan, and you're looking for this little event here. It's called the World Touring Car 600. It's probably the best paying of, I guess, in the game, really, in terms of time. Now, how to run this car. Not much really changed from the previous update. You can make it a little bit kinder on its tyres. This will require you to do a single pit stop. The main thing that you're going to be kind of worrying about is actually the fuel consumption. For some reason that seems a little bit worse than it was previously. So what I recommend when you kind of get underway is running it at Power Mix 1 on these straights. I also recommend running a fully assisted, especially the braking area. This is because the brakes on this thing are absolutely terrible. It may look like you're braking a mile away from the corner, but trust me, you're going to need to do it, especially in the early stages when this car is definitely not at its strongest. Obviously, you are running racing tyres on, I guess, what is essentially when you should be running intermediates. So once you've kind of come off the main street, I do recommend turning your engine down to 3. or fuel mix free should I say, which you will see me do any moment now. But that will essentially help you with not spinning up your wheels when you're trying to get through the exit of corners, which is when you're mostly at risk of basically just spinning it up and causing all that power to essentially run you wide. Now, opening lap, I like to basically break this, I guess, strategy up at Tokyo into 3 different parts. So you'll have your survival stage, which for me personally, I count as, I guess, lap 1, 2 and 3. From lap 4, you're pretty much out of that. You can start pushing the car more. You'll feel like a lot more power is coming to the car, especially through the corners. It's not getting bogged down by the wet weather. You can drive it a lot harder. You'll notice that your laps will become a lot cleaner and a lot quicker. Now, this is by no means a perfect run, not at all. So my overall time isn't really reminiscent of where this car's actually at. So I mean, I will fully admit that it was a really bad run. I'm just basically giving you a typical overview of essentially when to pit, you know, what to keep an eye out for, and some of the more highlighted parts of the race. So as you can see, lap 1, we're just trying to cruise around and just essentially survive. You know, it doesn't matter if you're going to drop places, you'll quite easily make that time up, especially on the straights, early doors. You are much quicker than any of the other cars around you. It's all about kind of trying to keep it clean, avoid as much damage as possible, and try not to pick up the penalties. Now, on this overall run, I think I got about 60 seconds of penalties, so it wasn't perfect by no means. But you can, you know, once you get used to this car, start pushing more and more as you become more confident with it. As you can see, we've boosted the engine power back up to 1 on the straights, and I do recommend essentially just rinsing and repeating that. So on to lap 4, this is where the track becomes mainly dry, to be honest. This is where you're going to see your lap time start to plummet. This is when the car's going to become easier to drive. Those braking distances are going to start to become shorter. Although, you know, that is the massive weak part for this car. It's never absolutely amazing, but it still does help that you can start, you know, braking a bit later. And you'll find yourself getting a bit more confident with the car around about this time. So just keep an eye out and you can come out your survival stage at that point. Now, as you can see, I've absolutely just about to run out of fuel at this point. So we're just going to essentially just, I guess, drift into the pits. What you're going to do at this point at the end of lap 6, which is when I fully recommend doing your first pit stop, is take a set of new hard tyres and fill the car to full. This will be your only pit stop for the race. After this, you can continue on focusing all the way to the end, and while fuel might be a little bit of a push, you can actually make it to the end. You'll probably go across the line on fumes, but it is what it is. So a lot of the cars these days at Tokyo are 2-stoppers in terms of, mostly it's because of the tyre wear. Thankfully this one is not, because we are running a full set of racing hards, so they're actually quite good in terms of the life of these things. So you're just going to continue on as you have been, you know, running fuel mix 1 on the straights and fuel mix 3 around the more twisty sections of the track, and this will surely give you enough fuel to get to the end. Although I know it did for me. It may be a little bit different. If you think you're going to run out of fuel, you know, a bit too early, just turn the engine power down, or maybe just run it in 3 for maybe the last final few laps. This is my fastest lap of the race, so this will be I guess a bit of a better indication of this car's actual 1-lap pace. As you can see, the braking distance for this car is horrendous, and it's probably the only thing that lets it down. Because everything else about this car is absolutely amazing. Obviously it's 4-wheel drive, it's insanely quick in a straight line, so you know, you've got a ton of grip, you've got a ton of acceleration, a ton of top speed. Obviously you've got that awesome engine note coming from the GTR engine that we have tucked away in this Lancia. So it really is a really good car for its 1-lap pace. It's just the brakes that seem to catch most people out, and including myself. As you can see, my lap times are all over the place, fluctuating really. It's from, you know, really low 2 minutes. This one's going to get us into the sort of 1 minute 50s. So as you're going to see, like, once you've done a few runs and you get used to how the brakes work and kind of where you can and can't push, you'll notice your lap time will absolutely plummet down. Now, if I was running this at fuel mix 1 the whole time, you can guarantee it'd knock probably another second or so off, maybe even 2 seconds off the overall time, so it wouldn't be too bad at all. But I do recommend just continuing to run it as we have been with the power mix 1 on the straight and fuel mix 3 everywhere else. This is just to ensure that you've got enough fuel and you don't have to do another pit stop. In terms of tyre wear for this car, this is one thing I want to point out. It's actually pretty much non-existent. So as the tyres look like they're aggressively dropping off, you'll notice that the car actually starts to kind of behave more predictably. Obviously the tyres are kind of worn in at that point, and it's really not affected by tyre wear. It doesn't really feel any different, but I can imagine if you kind of just do it too much, they will drop off a cliff, which in Gran Turismo 7 is one of the worst things that can happen to you kind of mid-race, where your tyres are just completely gone and you'll find yourself essentially just crawling around. So we're going to round up the final few corners and we're going to come across the finish line as the engine splutters and comes to a halt. We're still able to just cruise over, and that's going to be the race done. So a big thank you to Alert Jester for making me aware that the Lancia is very much still in the game. There is a lot of potential with this car. You can massively get those times down quite easily. Like I said, it was by far a perfect run, and I still think it was in like the 25 somewhere, maybe even 26 or so. Even with over a minute of penalties, it really does, you know, kind of knock, I guess, your overall time down. Once you kind of get used to this car, there is the potential. Originally it was a 23-minute car at Tokyo. I don't think it's quite on that level now. I think like the 24s is still possible. I'll still have to do some more testing, but if you already had the previous build of this car, it is very much back. So it's looking like a few of the glitch builds are making a return. Don't forget to check out my sponsor, the Controller People, in the description down below. Join my Discord. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.